I like video games. I've been playing video games for all of my life, starting at around 5 or 7 years old with a GameCube and playing games like Smash Bros. Melee and Mario Strikers. As I got older, games grew alongside me. I've watched them transform throughout the years, seeing games change so much and also changing myself at the same time. I've experienced a wide variety of games, from fighting games to golf with your friends. Experiencing so much has molded and shaped my taste in games, and I've grown to have my favorites. But I've also found issues in even my favorite games. Most games have flaws, no doubt, but some have more significant flaws compared to others. For example, Genshin Impact. If I were making this video 2 months from now, Genshin probably wouldn't have even qualified as a favorite of mine. Genshin has many critiques, enough that I could honestly rebrand this video as critiquing Genshin Impact, and I could go on and on and on about Genshin's flaws, but my biggest critique is that building a character just takes way too long. I mean, I made an entire video about it, partially at the very least. You know, you just put a 5-star and you want to build them? Alright, fight this boss 20 times in a row. And once you're done, you only have a fourth of what you need to level that character. Did I mention that you can only fight the boss 4 times a day? It gets even worse when you consider that you need to do way more than just get your character to level 90 to finish them. I can't even complain about the gacha because by the time I'm done building the character that I pulled, their banner is already being rerun. Now I understand it's a gacha game, and part of the fun is the slow grind, but it sucks being forced to choose between making my main stronger or building another character. I'm forced to choose between getting artifacts or talents for the characters that I do actively use, and putting together all of the materials I need to build a new character who won't even be remotely as strong as those on my already existing teams. I understand that every game of Genshin's nature needs gameplay loops, but the issue is, outside of events, Genshin only has loops. I actually enjoy artifact grinding and weekly domains for talents. I think those are pretty healthy for the game as they give me something to do late game. What isn't healthy for the game is the need to spend weeks getting a character to level 90, only for them to be subpar compared to your already existing builds. I just think this game would be better if characters didn't require so much effort for baseline performance. It sucks that needing the gacha for characters isn't even the real hurdle for using them. And on the opposite end of the gaming spectrum, we have Rainbow Six Siege, a game as far separated from anime as you can get. Wait, never mind, forgot about the esports skins. Contrary to Genshin Impact, Rainbow Six Siege, as a live service game, knows how to launch new content. Partially. Whereas Genshin holds your character for ransom behind daily resin limits, Siege goes, you just bought a new op? Hell yeah. We'll even make it so that said op can't be banned in rank, play as you will. In essence, Rainbow Six Siege is a great game that is constantly in a state of being mediocre. If you wonder what I mean by that, look at my review for this game. Let me use my experience with the game as an example. I started playing this game right before Ella dropped. On launch, Ella was broken, so naturally, as the Remwithal main I am, she was my first DLC op that I purchased. I grew very used to her playstyle. The game at the time was very fast-paced, gunfight focused, and she leaned into that very heavily. Eventually, Ella would get nerfed, which, okay, fair, she was broken, and honestly, even after the first nerf, she was still broken. And then another nerf, fair. In 2.4.2, they nerfed her gun, citing the reason being that her SMG was too good, to which I could agree. They also toned down her gadget a little bit, fair, and after this third nerf, I wouldn't say she was broken, but she was still really good. So logically, they nerfed her again. 3.1.0. This was the patch that made me switch to Vigil for my grenade roaming needs. Ella was another massive recoil nerf, a damage reduction on her primary, and impacts removed. This was the death of Ella for me, for 2 reasons. One, at the time I played on console, and to be fair, I'm not sure how bad the gun was on PC at the time, but on controller, good luck. 2, the playstyle wasn't exactly dead, but it was massively hurt, and Vigil was right there with a better gun, impact still, and a gadget that was arguably just as useful as Ella's mines at the time. That said, I'd still argue that at the time Ella's mines were better, but note at the time because they weren't done with the nerfs yet. 5.4.3, they made it so Ella is hit just as hard by her gadget as anyone else was, which, fair actually. They also removed her extra mine that she could use after being downed, which toned down her team's ability to refrag. Which, once again, fair. These nerfs were pretty unoffensive, but I can fully get why they implemented them. But I also want to note her pick rates at the time, hovering a tiny bit over 10%. In their words, underpicked. Players didn't pick Ella that much, she was niche at the time, and certainly not a part of the meta. If I had to guess, that 10%-ish pick rate was for specific sites where her gadget would lead to a few kills on a room or help defend a strong room. At this point, All bias removed, I think she was in a good spot. Every nerf before this was justified, as much as I really hated the impact removal. But nope, 6.3.0 brought a gadget nerf, and 6.4.2 brought another gadget nerf, a huge one. Ella's gadget is now a sound disruptor and a visual disruptor that is only effective at far range. Remember that Ella's guns suck at far range. Low damage, high fall off, no 1.5, and even then they weren't done. 7.4.0, Ella became 2-speed. You can argue that this isn't a nerf, and I've heard arguments both ways, but the point is that the reasons as to why people pick this operator are no longer there. I mean, look at her pick rates now. I know that it sounds like I'm just salty that I'm not carried anymore, but trust me, I'm not the only one miffed by Siege balance. The problem with Siege is that as time goes on, it becomes a completely different game. Random, pointless gun nerfs, secondary gadget reworks, map reworks, and I understand that as a live service game, Siege needs to be flexible, but some of these changes just feel really shitty, you know? You'll play with something such as Ella's speed or frag cooking for literal years, and then suddenly you'll log in and that thing is fundamentally different. I know that new operators come and switch the game up, but it doesn't feel like those operators are balanced around the game. Rather that the old operators and systems are changed to conform to the new game that those operators bring. By all means, I'm not a top Siege player, but as a longtime Siege player, these balance changes are rarely fun. The game is still pretty solid though, so I can't complain too much, I guess. And it's kinda funny because Siege and Genshin sort of have opposite issues. Siege focuses way too heavily on its new characters, and as a result, old operators suffer. Whereas Genshin, you're honestly best off using your old characters while new characters suffer. Ironically enough, in recent times, it's been older characters that have been most of note with updates. Now, into a game that has fewer damning flaws than both Rainbow Six Siege and Genshin Impact. We have Risk of Rain 2. Risk of Rain is a game that, while still receiving content throughout its life, differs from Genshin and Siege in that these content updates were additions to a mostly complete package. Granted, Siege is sort of the same way, but Siege differs in that its post-launch additions shape and change the game, unlike Risk of Rain, whose additions are just that, additions. As such, Risk of Rain is a game that is very hard to find fault in. At least, that was until the final boss one-shot me. Researching for this video, I learned that this game has a system called one-shot protection, a system that prevents a single attack from one-shotting a player. The final boss ignores this mechanic. I'm just saying, it feels really shitty to spend 40 minutes on a run and then just kinda get one-shot. It's just a really unsatisfying death to dodge a bunch of attacks and then get one-shot by the next one thrown at me. Is it also a skill issue? Yes, but it's my skill issue, and besides, I'm reviewing games that I like. I think the boss is still pretty damn good, even if I hate this aspect of it. Unlike Genshin and Siege's issues that come as a result of new additions and changes that could be fixed, Risk of Rain's problem for me is a very specific nitpick within the game. That issue is also hard baked into the game with no resolution, but in Terraria that issue is much less severe. It doesn't kill my experience in the same way that the others do, it's just kind of like, damn, that sucks. Now is the time where I want to highlight the way I structured the 4 games I'm discussing. They sit on a spectrum. On one side sits games that have problems arising with new additions and developments, and as we move right on the graph, we get closer and closer to problems that are hard baked within the game. Genshin leads heavily into problems with new additions into the game, but problems that are possible to ignore. Your experience technically isn't affected if you just choose to never build new characters. Rainbow Six Siege's problems are with new changes and additions, but unlike Genshin, those changes heavily affect existing parts of the game. Risk of Rain 2's problem is hard baked into the game, yes, but that problem is very, very specific to itself and doesn't affect the rest of the game. And then the last game, its problem is a key element of the entire game and affects the entire game itself. That game happens to be one of my favorite games of all time, the one that the intro music came from. Terraria is a great game. A great game that is very tiring. The worst part of Terraria is building a elevator, or building houses, or building farms, for the 7th time. It's all fine the first couple of playthroughs, but eventually these parts of the game just get to be so boring. They feel like chores that you have to do in between your next mining trip or boss fight. And I know, this is a part of the game, but I don't want to spend 4 hours fishing for a specific item for a playthrough that I'll beat 12 hours later. It's fun the first time around, but then you beat the playthrough and you're like, damn, I didn't need that Ankh Shield, or that Terra Blade that I made was outclassed by the pillar weapons anyway. It's definitely less of a problem when playing modded because playthroughs become longer and you can use quality of life mods if you want, but I can't count modded because this is the base game that I'm discussing. Don't get me wrong, it is part of the game and it's great the first few times, but as you play the game more and more, you find yourself using quality of life mods to make fishing a bit faster, to buy potions instead of crafting them, to sort your items for you. Beyond potions, I'm not at the point of using quality of life mods to get items for me yet, but there's a reason I've only ever crafted 3 Ankh shields, 1 Terra spark boot, 1 Terra blade, and why I've never held a legitimately obtained Zenith or Selfin. It's not a fault of the game by any means, it's just that I've played a lot of the game, and I've grown tired of those parts of the game. If anything, the fact that I still feel drawn to play it despite these parts that I dislike is only a testament to how good the game is. Terraria is, at its core, a great game and I always love it. I just don't love spending 2 hours farming for a fast clock. I don't know, maybe I'm too young. I've heard that you enjoy these things when you're older. At the end of the day, as people, we're all flawed. Now, if you want to iron out some of your flaws, my sponsor Brilliant. Nah, I'm just playing.